For today's Odu study group, I want to do a little bit of reflecting on how we came here, right? The bridge that brought us to this particular point. And as you may remember, our previous Itadogun was the Holy Odu OsaIrete. And OsaIrete, the featured verse of OsaIrete, was an interesting lesson in gratitude, and gave us some insight into the ways in which gratitude sets the stage for change and transformation. And it revealed to us the ways in which, if we lack gratitude and we refuse to change, then our sacrifice can take effect. The sacrifice, we can get the outcome of the sacrifice. It can manifest for us. But if we don't have gratitude, then that lack of gratitude can create another liability for us. So we get one blessing that we were seeking, but then our lack of gratitude and our refusal to change creates another kind of a problem for us. Hope I'm making myself clear. If you guys remember the story of Obatala and his 3 servants, right? You remember that. And how Obatala, we can infer that Obatala's 3 servants had departed from him because of a lack of appreciation, or a lack of gratitude for them in their presence. And so he had to make this sacrifice in 3 places. And this is important, right? Because Obatala had to make the sacrifice in 3 places. And he made the sacrifice at the tree in front of his house. He made the sacrifice at the drain at the back of his house, and then he made the sacrifice at the sheaf. And I talked to my Ojupona, who in Nigeria, about this particular verse, because I was perplexed and about the cockroach. When Obatala made the sacrifice, the 3rd one was for the cockroach in the back of the house in the sheath, right? And he corrected me. And so I want to actually, for you to go back and correct your notes. It's not, it wasn't the cockroach. It's the rabbit. It's the rabbit, right? The rabbit is Obatala's apprentice. And you guys will remember that from Ogunda. Well, that wasn't our featured verse of Ogunda Irete, but there's a verse of Ogunda Irete where rabbit is Obatala's apprentice. Some of y'all who've been around remember that. Remember? And Obatala needed to make a drum. And Obatala told Rabbit to go and assemble all the animals. And Rabbit ended up telling all the animals that Obatala was making a drum. So by the time Obatala got there, all the animals were gone. And he said, the Obatala figured out, it's because Rabbit was talking too much. So since you ran your mouth and made it so that I don't have an animal to make a drum with, Rabbit, you're going to become the skin. I'm gonna skin you and use you for my drum. So that was what he reminded me of Rabbit, and I'm like, yeah, of course, Rabbit is Obatala. So chameleon, toad, and rabbit are Obatala's apprentices, not chameleon, toad, and cockroach. Okay, so go back and make that adjustment to your notes. But the real thing here is that Obatala made sacrifice in 3 places. And these 3 places were right there on his compound. The front of his compound, the back of his compound, and kind of in the shed, in the back of the compound, right? Which is where the rabbit was. And so, in spite of all 3 of those offerings that Obatala made, he himself went unchanged. In spite of him going and, being told to articulate the value that each of them added, he went and he did it, but it wasn't sinking in. He wasn't internalizing the things that he was saying. So he remained unchanged. And so his refusal to express gratitude reflected in his refusal to change. And then it it backfired even worse, because then he turned around and he accused Orunmila of staging the whole thing in the first place. And so then Orunmila made the decree. All right, since you want to be really ungrateful, tell you what, from now on, sacrifice will no longer manifest immediately. Now you're going to have to wait until an unknown and undetermined time for this sacrifice to manifest, right? But one of the keys that I want to point out is that it was 3 places that Obatala was making the sacrifice, which signifies, you know, the third time's the charm. It's like you tried it once, you tried it second time. The third time is supposed to, like, that's the number of transcendence, right? That we're moving past dualistic, either this or that. This is the 3 lets us know that, oh, okay, we've reached another level of understanding. We've reached another level of being, right? And then similarly, in this Itadogun, we're at OwonrinIka. And you remember that Orunmila also made sacrifice in 3 places, right? Orunmila went and he made his sacrifice at the riverbank. No, you know, and he got a short-term benefit. His problem was solved for a minute, but then it came back. And then Orunmila went to the Orita, the 3-way intersection. He completed the sacrifice, and then he had a little bit of relief, and it reverted back, and he had another problem. And then Orunmila went to the Ojubo Eshu, the Eshu altar, or the Eshu shrine, and he made his 3rd sacrifice. And he had a little bit of relief, and then a little bit later, it reverted back, and boom, Orunmila finds himself back in this problem again. So finally, Orunmila is saying, what's going on? What am I doing wrong? And so he goes back to consult Ifa a 4th time. And it's at the 4th time that his Babalawo told him, oh, Orunmila, this is not an ordinary conflict. This is not an ordinary problem that you have. This sacrifice that you have been making isn't enough. Okay, this is the work of the Iyaami Agba. Okay, and what they're doing is they're deliberately avoiding your sacrifice. When you take it to the riverbank and leave it there, they don't go to the riverbank. When you take it to the 3-way intersection and you leave it there, they make it a point not to go to the 3-way intersection. And when you take it to the Eshu shrine, they make it a point to avoid that, which means they don't have to change, right? So whereas in OsaIrete, it was Obatala who didn't change. It was he, the protagonist of the story, was the one who was stubborn and refused to change, right? This time, it turns out to be the elders of the night who refused to change, right? And so because of that, Orunmila's problem was persistent, okay? It was a prolonged struggle, a prolonged battle, which is one of the major themes, or is really the major theme of this particular Itadogun. We're looking at a prolonged struggle, right? Something that's persistent but unwanted. And it is a carryover, it's an extension of OsaIrete. But whereas OsaIrete was telling us we need to explore ourselves, we need to look at, hey, sometimes you're stubborn and you're getting those 3 opportunities to examine how you need to change your thinking and change your feelings and be thankful so that you can adjust and act accordingly. Now it's Ifa saying, hey, you need to look at your environment. There are elements in your environment. There are people in your environment. There are characters in your environment that are not only reluctant to change, but they're committed to maintaining the status quo, right? They refuse to change, right? And so as a result, what did Orunmila have to do? Well, Orunmila had to take note of that. And so I want to show you this here, this graphic, right? Can you see that? Let me put this a little closer right here. Like so. You see that? So you see you got Obatala You got Orunmila, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share this file. Let me see now that everybody's on. I'm gonna put this down here. Let me share this file with you guys. So yeah, this is it. And I think you should be able to, all right, you should be able to check that out. Open up that image, and you're going to see how it's just a simple visual, so you can see the balance of how the 3 offerings were made by Obatala, but he himself remained unchanged. And then the 3 offerings were made by Orunmila, but you know, the Iyaami remained unchanged. They were deliberately doing things so that they could maintain the status quo. Sometimes the problem is within yourself. Sometimes the problem is outside of yourself, right? But no matter what happens, whether the problem is inside of yourself or outside of yourself, ultimately, you are the one who has to recognize the nature of the problem, and you've got to act accordingly. And it reminds me of a lesson that I'm not sure where this lesson comes from, but I think it's very applicable in the sense that, you know, they say that, well, you know this from cooking. You get boiling water, right? And you put an egg into boiling water, and the egg is going to get hard. But if you put a potato in boiling water, the potato is going to get soft, right? Boiling water will harden an egg, and it will soften a potato. Okay, so the softening of the potato sort of represents softening, maybe softening yourself. You got to soften your heart. You got to soften your head. You can't be hard-headed, right? You start off hard like the potato. Sometimes the boiling water, making the sacrifice over and over and over again, is intended to soften you like a potato. Other times, you're making that sacrifice again and again and again to firm yourself up. You need to get real solid and be firm about the things around you that are causing your problem in your environment. Okay. And so in this time, our Itadokun is advising us to take stock of everything that's going on in our environment, take stock of the goings on, the things that are, again, persistent but unwanted, and we need to get firm. It doesn't mean that we need to get aggressive against the problem. It doesn't mean that we need to go slash and burn the problem. It doesn't mean we need to be extreme about the problem, right? It means that we need to be thorough, though. Because what did Orunmila do? When the 3 sacrifices, when he realized, when the Zawos told him that they were avoiding those places because they had enough time and space to do so, they said, okay, so what Orunmila, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to offer the sacrifice in all 3 places at the same time. We're going to have to cover all your bases at once so that the riverbed or the riverbank, the crossroads, and the Ojúbọ Èṣù are all covered. So everywhere that they will go, they're going to meet the solution. You got to put that solution everywhere that they go. You can't leave any space for them to wiggle out, right? And so it's being more thorough, being more comprehensive, covering more bases, going above and beyond, right? Doing more than you would ordinarily do in order to address all of the environmental concerns that are affecting you adversely. Okay. So that is one of the primary messages that I want us to dig deeper into as we explore the Holy Odu OwonrinIka. And so now we can, I'm going to, get ready for us to get into our breakouts and do a little bit of examining, a little excavating. Okay.